And I got a question about lines that were placed either horizontal or vertical or had a persistent relation or something along those lines that made it horizontal or vertical. And I want to break that and make it an angle. So I'm going to go in and start out with a rectangle. Nope, I'm doing two diagonal points. So what happens with that rectangle is that these lines are now horizontal and vertical. I just don't see those relations. Okay. Now, you'll note that I have a button here, display persistent relations. I don't have any persistent relations. I have the create persistent relations, which is this button right over here. I have things like persistent relations browser, and then I also have what's called ignore relations. Okay, defines which relations will be persistently removed from the relation finder result. So these are things you can turn on or off, but there's nothing here that shows an inferred relation, right? And you go, well, how do I make this line an angle now, right? If I want to make this an angle, it's pretty easy, actually. Now, we have to understand the concept of what a line is. Basically, a line is two non-coincident points. Basically, 2 points that don't sit on top of one another, and that's all a line is. And the space in between those 2 points is filled. So, once we understand that, we understand there are different ways to control how a line is positioned in space. So when I pick a line, what I'm doing according to NX is I'm picking to see whether or not I want to apply a linear dimension to that line. Okay. Now notice on that line I have 3 points. I have the control points, the start, end, and the midpoint. Now that should give you an indication, big hint. If I come over here and pick an endpoint, there are my inferred relations. So the way NX applies the relations to lines when it comes to horizontal, vertical, that type of thing, is it looks at the endpoints and says, okay, off of my horizontal, I want these 2 endpoints to be the same distance away. Or off of my vertical, if it's a vertical line, I want these 2 points to be the same distance away. So it's not really making the line, saying the line is parallel to the horizontal and vertical. It's saying these points are the same distance away from the horizontal, from the vertical. All right, so it's a different idea of how these things get a relation. Now, once I select that point, I can come in, select the relation that I want to relax, grab that endpoint, and move. I don't have to delete anything. It's really, really easy once you understand how it works. So once again, I'll pick this endpoint. I have one more relation up here. If I select on it, grab it and drag it, just like that, done. I do not have that relation on there anymore. Okay, so if I were to grab this now and say make horizontal, notice I don't have persistent relation on. So when I grab that endpoint, there's my relation. If I turn on persistent relation and then apply, you'll note there is my relation right over there. I can pick it and then I can delete it. If it's a persistent relation, you can delete that relation using the keyboard. If it is a inferred relation, you can see there's a difference in color. If I pick it and hit delete, right, it just goes objects to delete. In the older version, when the new Sketcher first came out, it would delete the line. So there's been a couple of updates that have happened in between when it was first released to now. So, right, I can't, now it's looking to delete the line. So for these non-persistent relations, these inferred relations, or relations that you applied without a persistent relation turned on, you select that relation, and then now it breaks that relation. It removes it per se. You don't have to delete anything. Okay, it's much faster, in fact, once you understand how it's used. Okay. Another way this can be done, let me go ahead and delete the rectangle. I'm just going to start out with a line. There's my horizontal. That line is horizontal. If I pick the line, notice I don't have a relation that appears. If I pick the endpoint, there's my relation. Once again, I can pick the relation, drag it, it's no longer horizontal. I'll reapply it. Something else that you can do is, if you don't want to go through the efforts of doing that, if I grab this endpoint and give it a shake, you see me just shaking my mouse up and down, it will also remove those non-persistent relations, those or inferred relations. Okay, so that is another way to do it. I think it's colloquially called shake and break. Let's do this. All right, so I'll draw a line that's vertical, a line that's horizontal. If I pick that point, you'll notice I get those relations. Those, again, are inferred relations. So instead of picking them, if I pick that point and give this a shake, you'll note in this case, because I picked the end point of that line, I sever the relation, and I also severed that coincident relation. So if you need to break apart a profile, you can do it this way as well, right? If I came over here and picked this endpoint, and it was my vertical, well, I want to break it and get rid of it, and then just drag it and snap it over to here. So I have a relation set up between those two lines at those endpoints, that coincident relation. Now, once again, note what line I'm picking. Which line do I want to break the relation from? Okay, let me go ahead and place this back on again. So there is my horizontal relation. There is my vertical relation. Now, if I wanted to break the horizontal at this end point and create that little gap, then if I have to be cautious, pay attention to what the system is telling me, right? I have to be aware that when I highlight over this line and pick this endpoint, I just pick the endpoint of this line. Remember, there's 2 points there. They're coincident. One from the vertical line, one from the horizontal line. So now, if I relax that, grab and drag it, you'll see the coincidence stays because I didn't do that. The shake and break where I jiggled the mouse where it removes all of the relations. In this case, all I did was pick that horizontal, saying I want to break that horizontal on that line because that was the endpoint of the line that I picked. Okay, I can do the same thing over here. Let's pick this endpoint, that guy, and just like that, I have removed those relations. Okay, so some of you that are having difficulty with this it's just a learning curve. Once again, you have to sort of change the way you're thinking about things. This is to reduce the amount of things that you have to pick. You don't have to go and navigate to additional tools. You don't have to try to find what's what and where and how it's linked and push another button and go through a menu and all this other stuff. You don't. You just pick the line, or you pick the endpoint of the line you want to work on. And then it shows you everything that is attached to those elements. So it's not just picking the line. It could be, like I said, the endpoint. You saw it. So you just have to be aware of what it is you're picking and which line endpoint you're picking, etc., etc. So yeah, there's a few things going on, but again, once you get used to that new interface, going back to the old way is old. It's slow. Okay? I don't want to delete. I'm basically inert when I sit at my computer and I'm working on stuff, right? What I mean by inert is I'm moving my mouse hand and my other hand sits somewhere on the escape key or the return key or a shift control key, and I don't budge. So trust me, I understand what it's like to sit and be completely inert when you're designing something. So there are a lot fewer mouse picks with these relations. It's just you have to understand those mouse picks.